Dror Moreh, director of The Human Factor. This is about the decades-long effort to achieve peace in the Middle East, and this is a very personal story for you. So how long have you wanted to make this film?
Well, for quite a long time, and it took actually 3 or 4 years to make it. After I finished the interviews, it took 3 or 4 years to finish that.
Mm-hmm. This is told from the perspective of the people involved, these 6 American negotiators. Why did you land on that angle?
Because normally, when we get into understanding diplomacy, we are getting the photo ops or the sound bites that those kind of politicians gives us. And since there's been so many movies about, for me as an Israeli, about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict or the Israeli-Arab conflicts from both sides, I was fed up with this kind of point of view where each one tries to keep his legacy or whatever reasons they want to tell their story from that. And for me, the American negotiator were the professionals in the rooms, which were there with the leaders and could tell me a different story, a story which was come from within the room, not the bullshit of the photo op or those kind of sound bites. And that's why I wanted to tell it from their perspective. Their job was to take those two sides and bring them together and reach peace. And I cannot imagine a diplomatic effort that America was involved with in trying to solve the problem for so long, invested so much efforts and resources, and failed. At the end of the day, it failed. And I wanted to understand why. And that's why I went into this journey from the American perspective.
Mm-hmm. How long did it take, altogether?
Well, I started that in 2016, and now we are at the beginning of 2021. So at the end of the day, it took around 4 years to finish all of that. And there were few reasons for that, mainly because I'm interested. So there were very long interviews. For example, with the main character in the movie, Dennis Ross, I interviewed him for 35 hours. Each one of the other characters was at least 10 to 12, 13 hours. So it took a long time to compile that and to bring the narrative and to create the story that is in the movie now.
Mm-hmm. What was the process like reaching out to these men and getting them involved?
Well, it was a long process, but it started with in a meeting at Henry Kissinger's office. And I wanted to interview him for another project, and he said to me, well, let me speak to Dennis Ross, who was with me then. And I think it was before his testimony for the nuclear deal with Iran. And he started to investigate or to interrogate Dennis Ross about what will happen. And when I went down with Dennis after this meeting with Kissinger, I said to him, I find myself for the first time actually like I was inside the Oval Office, hearing a conversation between the president and one of his advisors. And it's a rare moment, we always want as documentary filmmakers to be the flies on the wall on those kind of moments. And would you be willing to come and tell me the story of what happened inside the room with the Israeli-Palestinian, the Israeli-Syrian negotiation, and why you failed? But you have to promise me that you will tell me the truth of really all of what happened inside the room. And he thought about it, and then he said yes. And then, from there, it started to go to all the other negotiators and bring them all along.
Was there anyone you weren't able to get?
No, all those that I wanted were happily participated.
Mm-hmm. One of the things I liked about the film is, or the people involved, when they were recounting these meetings and these conversations, it could come off as boring or pedantic, but they're all really engaging and riveting, and they're just really good storytellers. And there's some amusing anecdotes, like Rabin not wanting Arafat to wear a military uniform, or like Arafat watching the Golden Girls. Did you have any expectations of what they would say or how they would say it?
No, look, I'm interested in that, obviously. So I was interested in everything that they told me. Actually, the first draft cut of the movie was 36 hours, and I was interested in every hour from that 36 hours. But what came out, I think for me, what was surprising very much as building the narrative was what I call the human factor. This is something that we really don't pay attention a lot, especially in diplomacy. And it is about human beings, and it is about the relation between human beings. And all those anecdotes, amazing anecdotes that are like pearls that are throughout the movie from the beginning until the end, with all the characters that are changing there, you understand how much this kind of relations and how do you treat the other guy or the other party in front of you humanely, or you respect them, how much it creates this bond in order for you to reach peace. So in that sense, the human factor came out of the movie very, very, it was kind of straw out of the movie very, very uniquely. And that's why I called, at the end of the day, actually the first name of the movie was The Negotiator. And then when we shaped it more to the human factor, to try to really bring those moments of, as you said, the Rabin meeting Arafat for the first time, or Clinton, for example, trying to persuade Arafat to accept the deal in Camp David, holding his hands, that came out very, 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 very precisely. And that's why today, after 4 years of Trump, diplomacy is out. We don't treat diplomacy with really a lot of respect, I would say. It feels like the world has gone into an era of reality show. And when you see those kind of real moments of how hard it is to build peace, how hard it is to take two enemies and to find the common language between them, try to create the bond between them as human beings, and then maybe lead to a better place, we are in a worse world today. And I think this kind of what I call the human factor lacks in our day-to-day life everywhere.
Mm-hmm. And also in the same vein, the negotiators in the film, you could tell that they have this real emotional attachment to everything that happened. Like they're filled with regrets and hope, and this wasn't just like a work transaction for them. So you really do feel like they gave it their all, and it wasn't meant to be. Was that something you wanted to come through in the film?
There is an interesting anecdote. The last day of the interviews, I was with Dennis Ross, and at the end of that, we met with his wife, and in a restaurant in Washington D.C. And she asked me, "Do you think that it affected him, this process?" And I said, "Well, if I would work 25 years for a movie, and the movie will not come out, of course I will be affected by that." And I think for them, it's heartbreaking because they really gave it everything, and they wanted so hard to reach peace, each one for their own reason, but they gave it everything. And at the end, they failed, or the process failed. We are now here in a much worse situation than it all started in '93. And of course, it affected them. Each one was affected differently, but they are all scarred from the process, for sure.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned before the original cut was 36 hours. So how did you get it down?
Look, I had amazing stories, and as you go through the film, you hear all those anecdotes. And in a way, at one point when I decided on the human factor, I kind of tried to look, how do I construct those moments, those anecdotes, and create the gaps between them. And each one of the anecdotes, I have a lot more which were left on the editing room floor, but each one of the anecdotes were trying to tell a story of the situation, of the human situation, which was inside the room. So, for example, when King Hussein says to Bibi Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, "You are not a leader and you don't know what it means to be a leader," it was a pivotal moment for me to hear that this was what was going on inside the room. Although when they went out, when you see them going out, they are smiling to each other and they are as if everything is good. And so the first step was to really create this kind of string of anecdotes and stories, and then to connect them with the narrative of what was going on the negotiation. And then the second thing was this amazing footage, still photos from within the White House library, which never been shown before. I mean, the moment that we have in the movie have never been shown before. Nobody saw them. It was lying in the White House library. And I remember myself when I asked for this 12 days of just release the FOIA, Freedom of Information Act, to get all those photos to me. And they were releasing 36,000 photos. And I remember just trying to look at those photos and understand what I'm seeing in terms of the stories that I have, the Golden Girls, the plane on the way to the funeral of Rabin watching Arafat for the first time, looking at him, doesn't understand, what am I doing with this creature here? Rabin hugging Arafat put his hand on Rabin. All those moments were stories which I didn't see the visuals. How will I create the visual aspect? And when I saw all those moments, you know, it all combined together to the story that we see in the movie.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're about to have a new president here. What's your hope for the future?
Well, as we speak, you know, there are riots in Washington. I mean, I said to you before that this is pictures that I never dared to think that I will see in America. It reminds me more of Belarus. So I really hope that in the 20th, you will have a new president, and this attempt coup will be forced down. What do I have? What do I hope? Real diplomacy. You know, diplomacy is hard work. It's really understanding that America has a leading role in the world and has to do good with this leading role and get back to core diplomacy of understanding the sides where America is doing good. And I have full trust. I hope that the next administration and the good people that are there will understand that and create new reality in other parts of the world. Look, diplomacy can change life. I mean, it changed life in England, in Northern Ireland. It changed life in the Philippines. It changed life in many, many places around the world for the better. And it's not a reality show. It's not that you say that I am meeting with Kim Jong-un and there will be a peace process between us and North Korea, and then you get to the next reality contest. It's really hard work, understanding the other side, looking at perspective of the other side, understanding what the other side needs, and understanding what you need in order to bring those two enemies, foes, together to stop a situation which is volatile. And just another anecdote, you know, in the end of the movie, I speak with them about the situation in Syria, and that people are happy that Syria, the peace with Syria did not succeed. People are happy because, you know, in Israel, sometimes we would have given up the Golan Heights and there was a risk. And there's one sentence that Dennis said to me, and also Martin, when they said, you know, the whole situation in the Middle East would have been changed if there would be peace with Syria. And people in Europe and people in America don't understand that, let's say, the crumbling of Syria and what happened, the civil war in Syria, affected their life in Europe, affected the life of the American, the flow of the refugees. So those kind of butterflies effect of somewhere remote in the Middle East really influence your life and the life of others all over the world. And we need to understand that we are all connected. A year ago, I was shooting in America, and now look at what happened when a little virus started in China almost a year ago. It changed completely the whole world. So we are all dependent on each other. We are all living by each other, and we have to understand that and try to create a better world for us and for future generations.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, Dror, it was great speaking with you. Thanks so much for your time.